Or
Yeah, you're a little crisper on this, Kurt,
Yes,
and your hair isn't floating into the background.
that's plus.
Kind of helps your ghost-like image.
okay, we're live.
Hey, we're live. Does that mean we can start the show?
Yes, it
We can
means that
start the
we can.
show. Hit it. Welcome to California Free Radio.
Hey,
Slightly
wait a
delayed.
minute. I thought I was entering.
Oh, you are going to start the
You
show. Go ahead, and then I'll bring
Let's go ahead and
Magdalene.
grab power. Hey, welcome to California Free Radio. I'm Scott Piotr. I'm joined by Mike Netter and Kurt English. We're bringing you late tonight because of technological problems. We tried to switch platforms tonight and it didn't work. So we're reverting back to our old platform, but our production level is coming up. So stay tuned till next time. We'll be able to do a little bit better. And tonight, there's so much to talk about. You know, I don't know about you guys. Are you tired of winning yet?
A
I'm
lot of winning the last 9 days.
I don't mind winning. I think winning's good. I think President Trump's been there for, like you say, 9 days, and he's already turned over the apple cart several times over. But we're
Well,
concentrating
some
on
breaking
California.
news, Scott. We have breaking news. A judge
Breaking,
in
don't break anything.
California today ordered the reopening of a 2,000 person ICE detention center in Adelanto, and the Biden regime had closed it down. And so this will allow even more raids and local places to put illegal aliens as they're on their way out of our country.
I love it. Our buddy Newsom has closed down several prisons. First we had overcrowding, and we had to let prisoners out into the neighborhoods in order to make room and comply with federal judges' rulings about our overcrowded prisons. And we've gone from that to actually shutting down some prisons. Maybe Trump can rent a couple of those from Newsom, because after all, the state does need more money. So tonight we're going to talk about and the fires, but we'll also talk about government incompetence regarding the fires. It's all coming to the surface. All of these stupid legislators. This is a governmental and political snafu. It's totally 100% the fault of the legislature and its subsidiaries. And they're trying to pass the blame. And why don't we start out, Kurt, with the first thing that they're trying to pass the blame on is, or do you want to take this, Mike, with Senator Scott Wiener, our favorite gay lesbian senator, has proposed new
Our favorite
legislation.
child molesting pervert in the state Senate.
And
That's
he's not
him.
exactly a lesbian. I do want to correct, although we're not sure. I'm going to take Scott at his word. One of the things in California, and thanks for everybody, and a quick thing here. If you see us on Facebook, finally, we'll bring in Magdalene in a second to talk about that. But share, follow Netter News. We're on X at Netter Mike. We'll get our new technology working better last week. It'll be a shorter show tonight as I have to go with another gig after this. But
Well, we
also
might
on
stick
Facebook,
around. We don't
you
have
may
to
not
wait,
be able
do
to because
we?
it'll be on my computer.
We'll just leave it live forever, and we'll just snap.
And on LinkedIn. But one of the things that's really fascinating, how California government always wants to point the finger at everybody but them. And something we were talking about before the show as we're trying to get our new technology to work was Scott Wiener. And by the way, if you're going to run for office,
Wait a
change
second.
your name from Wiener.
That's Scott Wiener, Senator Scott Wiener.
Senator Scott
Hey,
Wiener,
don't blame me.
SS
I can't help the fact he's named Scott.
SS
Sorry,
Wiener.
SS Wiener.
Literally
Yeah.
has before the legislature right now a law that when a natural disaster happens, and I want to emphasize the word natural, meaning that it's a natural disaster, the oil companies, due to climate change, will be held liable for that natural disaster, which means when there is an earthquake, a flood, a fire, even one started, say, by the utility companies, not that they would ever have liability, the oil companies will be held liable. When floods boom across Newport Beach, as you can see where Kurt right now is almost underwater, the oil companies will be held liable. When the big one hits, like it did in Northridge way back when in 1998, the oil companies.
1994.
1994. Thank you for the correction, Kurt. Kurt remembers it well. The
Northridge.
oil companies will be held liable. Now, I don't even understand how this holds up under law. Kurt does have a law degree, and Kurt, although you're going to correct me for everybody out there, most contracts implied or otherwise have something called force majeure. I get it's different. That says the natural hand of God, stuff happens, to be polite. Kurt, how in the heck would government even get away with trying to blame a specific industry on something that historically happens on the planet?
Well, this is part of the far left political initiative. They want to get rid of gas powered cars. They want to get rid of your gas stove. They want to get rid of your propane barbecue. They don't want us to be able to drive.
All underneath the climate
Hold on.
change.
So
Yeah.
instead of trying to persuade an unwilling population to agree with them, which will never happen, never. So what they do is they try to sabotage your ability to do these things. And one of the ways to do it is to scapegoat power companies, oil companies, insurance companies to where they don't want to be in California. I mean, let's see how they've done that. State Farm canceled 70,000 homeowner policies last year. They canceled policies in Pacific Palisades, so now those people aren't insured. Now, what they want to do is blame oil companies every time there's a natural disaster because they say it's climate change, which is a hoax. But it's part of their communist style agenda to prevent us from driving by making all the oil companies want to leave California. How would we buy gas then?
But let's take it a couple steps further of things I don't understand. We talked about this ahead of time. Couldn't you say then that everybody who gets lung cancer or gets cancer, period, must be the fault of all the companies that have developed the internal combustion engine? And wait, if I use electric cars going in the future and batteries have leakage and people get cancer, wouldn't that be the fault of the car companies? How far does the government really think they can extend this? Because if this was legal, doesn't that kind of open Pandora's box?
Well, it's a ridiculous claim. Go ahead, Scott.
Theoretically, you got EV cars, and they have to plug in, and they get their electricity. Let's be generous and say that it's not coal, but let's say natural gas fired plants that produce the electricity. The state is putting a requirement on us that requires more natural gas to be burned. And if natural gas is one of those evil fossil fuels causing global warming hoax, then isn't the state liable for that too? Because they're the ones regulating the requirements for it?
Here's the way I view it if you don't go far enough. And I'm saying this facetiously, but I'm not. Because government wants to blame acts of God on something. The climate change hoax, as we call it, everything is somebody's fault except for the people running government itself. Kurt,
Except for government.
I'd like to propose something to you, okay? And what I'd like to propose is when this show is over, Scott and I would like to file a class action suit against all of mankind for everything that has been done to the planet and been done today. I'd like to know if I can file a class action lawsuit against all 8 billion people on the planet. And Kurt, Scott and
Not
I are
going to be
generous
real
people.
effective with the jury there, Mike.
Well, I'm just saying that's why I need you. I only want $1 a person. But in effect, I don't really get how far this can go because they're trying, oil is something that is natural out of the ground, created by dinosaurs. I just don't really understand how this law has any credence to it at
Well,
all.
actually, Mike, it turns out, to the surprise of many liberals, that we all know what the most common liquid on Earth is. Look behind me in the background: water. Mike, what is the second most common liquid naturally occurring on the Earth?
I
Assuming
know,
that's
I
oil,
know.
Kurt.
What, Scott?
Oil.
Crude oil. Crude oil. So when liberals say, well, this is not natural, yes, it is. It's the second most common liquid on Earth. God put it there for our use.
It's back to my question, though. Don't bounce around it, counselor. You're under oath, or you're on California Free Radio. We expect you to tell the truth. How does a law like this hold up in court? And then I have a follow-up question for you
That's
once
a
you
very
answer.
complex question. There isn't enough time in this segment to go over that thoroughly, but what I can tell you is that the term frivolous lawsuit comes to mind with your suggestion of suing 8 billion people.
No, no, no. Forget my 8 billion people. How does that was frivolous? Thanks for picking up on that so quickly, Kurt. But I could tell you went to USC. But my question is, how does a law suing the oil companies, I mean, holding the oil companies liable for natural disasters, hold up in court, period?
Depends on the jury. O.J. Simpson was found innocent in Los Angeles, you might recall.
Makes no sense to me because once you do that, you kind of open Pandora's box that everybody who
None of
has
it makes sense. None of this makes sense. It's just about communists blaming businesses as a tactic to bully people into having fewer choices because they can't get a legislature to ever pass their crazy ideas.
really goes to me to the fact what they're trying to do is, and this may be where Scott Winger's even in cahoots with Newsom and the rest of them, but take the focus for the majority of public that aren't suffering the wrath of the fires in this disaster to blame it on somebody, anybody, but the Democrats that have run Los Angeles and run the state for a very long time. A
Well,
lot
that's
of
a
this could
great
have been avoided.
transition. Since what we're talking about is the blame game, I'd like to liberals like transition. So let's transition to the performance or lack thereof of Governor Newsom, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, the DEI head of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and the three Kristens in the Los Angeles Fire Department. Speaking of pointing fingers and scapegoating, there's a lot of blame to go around for this fire situation that was completely avoidable. Let me tell you a story. We grew up in Encino. We would drive by the Jackson 5 house going up the hill toward Mulholland on Havenhurst. And every
You
spring,
did. You didn't drop your kids off there, did you?
no, I was the kid. So that was never
Okay.
dropped off there.
I'm just
But
making sure.
on our way zipping by up the hill, we had 400 feet of brush from our wall down to the house below us in the hills. Every spring, Los Angeles Fire Department would come and they would tell my dad, you have two choices. Choice number one is you're going to pay to clear the brush. Choice number two is we're going to clear it and bill you. And guess what? If you do it, it'll be a lot cheaper than if we bill you. So the heavy hand of government made people in the hills clear their own brush.
Which is a great transition. We haven't had a chance to talk how the heavy hand of federal government is coming down on people like Karen Bass. And for everybody out there, and I put it up on my X account, and I put it on a few, if you have not watched President Trump doing a master class, as I call it, on how to run a meeting and how to be president, watch what he did last Friday in Firehouse 29, I believe, with Karen Bass many conservative people, the liberals, Brad Sherman, and school them that the federal government still is in charge. And as someone put it, daddy's home and he's got his belt out. And the reality is, and we talked about this a lot. People are trying to, quote, not do sanctuary cities, protect the government from coming in and getting illegal aliens as criminals. Scott, how's that going to work out for them?
Well, I think it's interesting that the state wants to sit there and be a sanctuary city and provide cover for illegals. They don't want to cooperate. So you got an illegal alien that's been arrested for, I don't know, jaywalking, and he's being released from the prison. The normal cities or state would sit there and call up ICE and say, hey, Joe's being released or Jose's being released, and you can come down and pick him up at noon. And they come down, they know he's not armed, he just got out of the jail, they pick him up, they take him to ICE detention. But because we're a sanctuary state, they're not allowed to do that. So now they find out that Jose's been released into the neighborhood and they know his whereabouts. And so they go and they do a raid on a house in whatever neighborhood that is, and they arrest the guy. And if 5 or 6 other people are there in the house with him, they're all illegals, they get arrested too. So the media is in shock, of course. They're kind of like, what do you mean? They were asking Tom Holman this, our Homeland Security director. You're going to arrest people that are not criminals? And he goes, they're in the country illegally. They're criminals. And we wouldn't normally be going after them. We're going after the low-hanging fruit in the people that are doing rape and murder. But if they're caught in the same room with these guys, we're not going to just let them go free. They're going to be detained and they're going to be deported. And so this whole sanctuary city or sanctuary state thing is likely to backfire on the very people that they're trying to help. Oh, I'm surprised government's gone astray and had unintended consequences, but that's the point.
To be clear, they can actually stop them from going to jail. We're going to do a test here. Magdalena, say something. And that's not working well, because I want to get Magdalena's opinion on Scott Wiener. I'm going to call her, but I want to be clear, sanctuary city doesn't exist under the law. And Kurt, you may be a lawyer, but it doesn't exist. They can pass legislation making it more difficult for the federal government. But as Trump and his compadres are making it very clear, there's a new sheriff in town, and Trump is going to make sure Californians get water, which is a handy thing to have.
Well, he already did. He ordered them to stop dumping the water in the ocean, and he had either the military or a federal agency come here and turn it on so that we get it in Southern California.
And he's going to shut down our borders, and Newsom can whine and kick. They cannot stop federal agencies from going anywhere they want in the United States. And after we bring Magdalena on real quick, I'm going to call her and get her opinion of Scott Wiener here.
While you're doing that, I want to put another incompetent Los Angeles luminary in the crosshairs here, rhetorically speaking. The head of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, an agency that my dad, who built houses in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, said has always been incompetent, makes $750,000 a year. For 11 months, a reservoir at the top of the hill in Pacific Palisades was empty for maintenance, even during the fire season last summer. And the purpose of that reservoir is to fill it up and have water run downhill to the fire hydrants on the streets in Pacific Palisades. So because the reservoir was empty, there wasn't sufficient water in the fire hydrants.
These fire hydrants?
I don't so. Oh, yeah, probably one of those. Yep.
Real quick, we're running a short show tonight. Magdalena, what do people in San Francisco think about Scott Wiener? Do they really admire him? Is he untouchable?
You know, it's interesting. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. When I talk to, because I'm an LGBT person, nobody likes him, but yet he gets voted every time, and you're hoping that would get in this time. To be honest with you guys, I've been focused so much on the RFK2 and your HHS Secretary of Confirmation hearing, and now keeping it right to the COVID Democrats. But anyway, But what I want to say is that Scott Wiener doesn't care. Scott Wiener's for Scott Wiener. He just blows him off of, the illegal immigration thing or whatever. He can't stand the guy.
And that's the
No,
problem we
it's
have.
not.
Even the new mayor of San Francisco is coming around. I'm gonna let you go. Thank you for calling in. Keep posting our shows. I owe you a few, but it's a short show tonight.
Except Digital Broadcasting Radio.
Got it. Love you, girl. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Yeah.
So it is interesting. So except this is something else. When we talked before, a group of us got together, and I want to focus on Scott Wiener for something. People in the legislature that I know on the Democratic side are scared of Scott Wiener, and many people who are citizens. It's like the mob up there. Like Paglia said, she's LGBTQ FYZ, but people are scared of Scott Wiener. And he seems like he can propose almost anything that he wants. And that's a problem that we have that stems out of San Francisco. We have the same problem in Los Angeles where people are scared within the government of doing things like the disappearing.
Let's talk about Los Angeles, Mike, because we have a communist, incompetent mayor, Karen Bass, who now wants to hire a consultant to advise on the equity and environmental sustainability of the rebuild of Pacific Palisades, which doesn't matter because those people have property rights. But even Elon Musk tonight has called Karen Bass a communist for that.
Well, Karen Bass is obviously a communist, but the problem we have here is that even if you go to recall Karen Bass, her replacement is 15 more communists that happen to serve on the Los Angeles
Now,
City
actually,
Council.
I'm going to challenge that, Mike. They ran a poll after the fire, and Rick Caruso, who lost narrowly to Karen Bass the last time, is up 10 points.
You're
Yeah,
wrong,
but
and I'll
if you
explain it. What
recall-
matter?
If you recall,
Oh.
Karen, the replacement isn't on the ballot. The 15 council people in LA get to
Correct.
choose the replacement.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
They
so
have-
it wouldn't
because
matter
they're
if he
charter
was up
city.
All
north.
right, so you'll get another incompetent person to replace this incompetent person.
Correct, and
You
the
get another-
problem we
yeah.
in Los Angeles, it's the same as San Francisco. We have two cities where people, the Democrats, even the moderate ones, and there are moderate Democrats. The leftists hang out with the Democrats, but there's moderates, logical Democrats. I don't know that aim to serve in the Los Angeles City Council, but let's put that down for a second. But people are afraid to speak up. And so in general, what's happening, and this is the very definition of socialism, communism, oppression. We think of free speech today as being able to talk about what we want to talk about on social media, on X and Facebook tends to curtail us more, but just in general public and at certain meetings, they let the crazy leftists talk. But if you would think somebody would have seen, look, LA is a big place. No one in government knew that reservoir was empty for a very long time. Wrong. We knew that they did. And it was shown in memos that went out. They knew it was a problem, and the memos were marked file. We know that government is using disappearing messages to communicate. Yes, Los Angeles government, I get what you're going to say, Curtin Scott. When they send the message to you in government or a contractor, that message disappears, so there's no public record of it. And apparently, they've been doing this since about 2015. So
Clearly,
we don't even know.
violates the transparency laws.
Really? I'm kidding. It literally does. This is how bad the government in California has become. Not that there's just a
Well,
net.
it's corrupt. It's not bad.
They
It's
moved
corrupt
over to corrupt and whatever.
and evil. Don't forget evil.
And evil, very evil. So,
By the way,
Why-
this is our beautiful Scott Wiener, Senator Wiener, in a gay pride parade, waving high.
no. Isn't he doing a Nazi salute?
Yeah,
I think
probably.
Nazi salute. You caught on fast. Amazing.
A quick learner. Here's what we have in California. We've got small groups of people afraid. Shannon Grove, who I know pretty well, for instance, last year proposed
An
a
excellent representative. Is she still in the state senate?
100%. I just talked to her the other day, as a matter
Excellent.
of fact. and she had a trouble passing human trafficking for children because many Democrats were afraid to speak up against Scott Wiener, and Gavin Newsom was kind of trying to curtail, and he finally passed it because it has to be an issue where people have had enough. We can't have people from either party working in fear. And by the way, that includes the Republican Party too, which we're trying to fix. And I'm on a lot of calls on, which is why I have to bolt tonight to be on another call about. We have to fix the Republican Party so they stand up for our values, and people within the Republican Party aren't afraid to speak up for it. And by the way, Democrats, fix your own damn party too, because most people, Democrat or Republican, don't want their house to burn, don't want something to happen to their kids. They want things, they would like water, they want things to go well. And California is getting to the point where they are forcing the federal government to step in. But
And they don't want their
gentlemen,
kids castrated by California teachers or politicians.
so what was the leftist solution to that this week, which is qualified as an initiative to collect signatures?
They want to have California secede from the Union.
I've never seen the movie Lincoln. Now let's be really clear.
By the way, that would be great. Think about what we could do if they did. We could have the army invade. We could hang all the Democrat politicians as traitors and then ban the Democrat Party in California. Problem solved.
The problem for starters, one is, and for everybody out there, state of Jefferson, etc., watch the movie Lincoln. He was the last president to say you can't succeed from the Union. Now, to be clear, part of the problem here with this initiative, it's not really California succeeding from the Union. This is another scam. And in case you're not paying attention, what it really does, if you think, oh, I'm going to sign this, how harmless could it be? I'm going to listen to Kurt of all things that can happen. You know what it actually does? It forces the California Department of Finance, I think it's 100 million, you can look it up, to spend 100 million studying what it would cost California to succeed from the Union. And then California would have a vote to actually succeed from the Union, which, by the way, is a complete waste of time because it has to be ratified by 37 states. And we haven't even ratified the ERA one from, I believe, 1987.
It's already expired. Too late.
I know that, but
And do
here's
you know
my
who
point.
the one woman who we have to thank for that more than anyone else? God rest her soul, Phyllis Schlafly. She
David,
almost single-handedly
right.
defeated that thing.
My point is, Democrats keep putting stuff on the ballot that don't make our life better, that just enrich other people. Scott, what are you trying to show us there? That you know how to work your background technology?
Yeah, there are all these people. We don't have our new technology because it failed tonight, where we could have shared screens and done things the easy way. So yes, I am definitely
Schmeezing.
I'm definitely showing you what we can do in the background. This is Mayor Bass on our way back from her taxpayer-funded junket to Guyana or Guano. She's probably in batch what. And this is where she played mute. The reporter caught her online or on camera saying, don't you think the people are suffering? Why are you coming back? And why haven't you done anything? And she didn't even open her mouth. And we showed that video on the last show. So, hey, Mike, you can take Magdalena Square off this thing, can't you?
I didn't know her square was up.
It is.
So, we have failure at government level. The big failure is, no, the Santa Ana winds were not caused by Karen Bass. But, it's not like they haven't been around before, so we should have known, right? The big thing is still, we had too much fuel in the forests or in the brush. And because of the environmentalists, suing over the gnatcatcher habitat being infringed upon, which I'll tell you now, doesn't exist anymore. Because they didn't want us to touch the habitat. And, really all they would have had to do is modify the fuel probably 300 feet away from homes. it wouldn't have been that difficult to do. They should have done it throughout the whole forest. But even if you sit there and defer to the gnat catcher, to sit there and take the 2 wet winters that we had before this, where we had lots and lots of plant growth, which is dry as a tinder because we haven't really had significant rain for a year until last weekend, and that really wasn't that significant. And it was also a little late, so we had way so much fuel, and that's Karen Bass's fault, and it's Governor Newsom's fault, and the environmentalists' fault for screwing us over with too much fuel. So when the Santa Anas came up, which are inevitable, there was no way they could put the fire out. And
What's the little fish we're supposedly sending all the water out to sea to protect?
our delta smelt, but the argument there is, to their credit, is they had enough water in Southern California to do something about it. But even with all the fuel that was burning, there's no way that all the water in the world would have stopped the fires. But it could have saved a lot of houses if they had adequate water.
Yes, and let's start with the basic argument, because by the way, forget if it's Southern California, Northern California, you don't clear brush, fires are going to happen. But I want to spend a second, because Scott, I know you're focused on the gnat catcher. Now, the gnat catcher hasn't gotten as much publicity as the Delta smelt, which they're supposedly trying to save. But here's a trivia fact for you that you can look it up. Every year, the California conservation people that count fish, not their official name, but close enough, you can do the acronym,
The
okay?
fish counters, got it.
The fish counters, they go out and count the number of Delta smelt that they find in the wild. Do you know how many they found this year?
0.
Correct. Do you know how many they have found the previous 6 years?
Like 21.
None. They have
None.
literally found none for 7 years. So that now it doesn't mean the smelt's extinct, because there are breeding smelt, because apparently smelt are really important for something. And I get it, the salmon eat the smelt. We use smelt for bait, but let's put it down.
They are a bait
All the
fish.
yes, all the smelt that are out there are because we're breeding them, and all the water we're flushing out to sea. And I said this last week, and Kurt, you weren't on. Count your blessings.
That's
Is
because
that
I was at the inauguration for a week. As
Oh.
you can see by my sweatshirt.
Wait a second. It's difficult to read in the camera. What does it actually say? Presidential inauguration.
Disappeared.
Yeah, I just-
All right.
Now, you're disappearing. You're ghosting
Before we
us.
get
Yeah, it's not going to work on this technology.
that's okay.
Presidential seal,
Kurt was
Trump
at the
ban.
inauguration. Let me finish my point. Here's the point. Any smelt that we have right now are not because we're dumping water out to sea. It's because we are breeding smelt in hatcheries, not like salmon in hatcheries, not to eat, but to feed the salmon, which aren't hatcheries. We've taken down big dams. And here's my biggest problem that I said next week. I really don't want to know how the water system is managed. That's not my job, okay? It is not my job or my problem to watch the reservoirs. I'm an average citizen. It is not my job or my problem to make sure that when the tap goes on, water comes out. Government's job is to help us and provide us with this infrastructure. And gentlemen, as I say over and over again, government has failed. And back to the beginning of our abbreviated show, it's not the oil companies that are liable for taking something under capitalism that I like to buy in terms of gas, heat, and electricity. Government is liable because government is not doing its job. And that is a small group of individuals, not a large group of individuals in California, that aren't doing their job. And in fact, have moved over from inept to evil because they are stopping us from being safe, from being hydrated, from living our everyday lives, and making me worry about how these systems work.
Well, what's interesting is, we've kind of dealt with some of the causes of the fire. Ineptitude in government, starting at Newsom, going down to Karen Bass and her DEI hires at the water DWP for the water and the water management, as well as the fire department DEI hires. So it was a perfect storm, so to speak, right? Everything that could go wrong went wrong. And it was all government's fault. We haven't even gotten into the rebuilding side of it and how it's not going to happen. These guys are so inept. That's what happened at the Karen Bass and Donald Trump press conference. And Donald Trump ran circles around Karen Bass because she's basically saying, oh, it's going to take about 18 months to review all the sites and decide whether they're safe enough and not safe enough for the owners to go back in and clean it up. And Trump's kind of like, why? They're standing there ready with brooms and shovels. They'd love to get in there and clean it up. Why don't you just let them in? And it's their property. Just let them in. Well, we can't do that. I mean, we got to check for environmental problems and make sure the building's not going to fall down on them. It's kind of like, it's their property. Let them take the risk. They want to go on, great. They don't want to go on, that's fine too. But
Look, in
get out
Bass's
of the way,
defense,
Karen Bass.
in Bass's defense, and Brad Sherman and Judy Chu, who sat around the table, in their defense, they're morons, okay? And they shouldn't even have the jobs that they have. And frankly, you know what fascinated me most? We're going to go a little overtime, then I really got a jam here. What fascinated me the most about that press conference, when we talk about details, and again, as I keep saying, my house burned. I know a lot of details. Scott's an architect. Kurt's an attorney. We know a lot of details. To me, the most fascinating part about that press conference was Donald Trump saying, hey, I own a property in Beverly Hills, which, to be blunt, I doubt he's hardly ever at. And we get these notices saying we use too much water. And I'm thinking, this dude, I mean, I doubt Gavin Newsom even knows he gets a water bill. The fact that President Trump is aware of how things work to the most minute detail, and
Yeah.
Karen Bass is looking like, I have emergency powers, and Brad Sherman is like, I have a brain, and they don't know how things actually work, and that the President of the United States knows these little details that are more close to the ground level elected officials certainly should, just amazes me.
Well, Mike, people are catching on. I think that the incompetence and failure of Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, the Department of Water and Power person making $750,000 a year, and the three Kristens of the fire department has crystallized because people can see it on TV and in social media. Quinnipiac did a poll. They released the results today. The Democrat Party nationwide, 31% favorable, 57% unfavorable, minus 26 points, the highest number in the history of the poll. Democrats are being held accountable finally.
So what we have to do, and been on a large number of calls today, actually. And if you're watching this on social media and you were on early today, you're going to hear a repeat. It's time that we got people who vote Democrat, I'm going to say it, to convert Republican and vote differently. And it's up to you out there watching this, okay? Again, the average person, we have two bright people on this show and me. And the average person out there, you really don't want to know how things work. I don't want to know how the fire hydrant gets water. Even though you might know, I don't want to know how the light comes through my lights in my computer. I just don't want to know that. You have to know so much today because in California, so much goes wrong. And you were not going to be able to go out there and fix the water system as individuals, but we can go out as individuals and tell people you really should start converting Republican and at least think about not voting the way that you've been voting. Because I don't know about you guys, if you can't see that government isn't doing its job, I actually understand that. But if you can't see now that things are going wrong in California and aren't concerned with causation, which points right back to individuals in government who've grab power, which is certainly a few rich people who have empowered those people to do it, you better start paying attention. Scott and Kurt, let's wrap it up because I got yet another thing to do.
Are you telling me when you leave, we have to shut down, or can you keep it running?
Yes, I can't because I'm going to be using this same program for the next thing I'm doing.
So you got a better offer
Well,
someplace else.
actually, let's see if I can make you the host.
Well, it's past 7:30, so our audience probably is heading out. So let's wrap it up for tonight and look forward to seeing everyone.
I
at
made Scott the
6:30.
host. I'll tell you what, you guys can ramble on as long as you want. I just made Scott the host. You're
Go
now
make
in
California great again, Mike.
That's my plan. And for everyone out there, next week we'll be back at 6:30. We'll see if our new technology work. We have grand plans for 25 and 26 because we do this because we care. And your job in the next years, starting tomorrow, every day, is to get more Californians to know your job is to vote and get them to vote by start making them pay attention by caring. Nobody wants
Not
their
just
home to burn.
California, New Jersey, Illinois, New Hampshire, every place.
100%, but I'm focused on California because Illinois, New Jersey, New Hampshire are too damn cold for me, and I want to stay here. Gentlemen, I'm going to leave you with the helm of this. God bless you, and we'll see you next week, and we'll do a practice session and get the technology right.
All right, bye, Mike.
All right,
Hey,
Scott, as
Kurt,
we wrap up, what's the most important thing to you to look for in the next week?
you mean regarding the fire in California?
Regarding anything in the world.
Oh, in the world. Well, certainly what Trump is doing is fantastic. And his executive orders, I mean, we're crying out loud. We talked about this last week. On Inauguration Day, he sits at a desk in the middle of the convention center and 20,000
That was
people.
actually the Capital One Center where the Washington Capitals and the Washington Wizards play.
Right. So there's 20,000 people in this center, and they are watching him at a desk signing things. Now, granted, he has a guy, they explain what each executive order is, and he had been talking about those things on the campaign trail for months, and, signing it, everybody's cheering like, here it is. He's only been president for 6 hours, and he's already got all of these things accomplished. And I'm not tired of winning yet. I'm totally good with that. And I love the fact that all these wacko judges are coming out and they're trying to put the brakes on these executive orders. And we had a good example of Biden. He sat there and just ignored 3 Supreme Court rulings, one of which was paying off the student loans to the tune of billions of dollars. The Supreme Court ruled that he did not have the authority to do it, and he freaking kept doing it anyway. And so, I would love to see, since Joe started the president, I would love to see Trump sit there and continue some of these executive orders like deportations and things like that. And hey, the judiciary don't have any police. Just go ahead and keep doing these deportations, and while it gets worked out in the courts, don't sit there and wait. And I don't think he's going to. I think we're going to see fireworks where these idiot liberal judges appointed by Biden and Obama are making decisions that are putting the brakes on or reversing some of these executive orders. Trump learned his lesson in the first period or his first term. I think he's just going to sit there and say, well, I'm going to keep doing it until it's adjudicated all the way to the top. I'm not stopping.
Well, it's ridiculous for a federal judge in a little district to try to have a nationwide injunction. They don't have any jurisdiction or authority over the whole country, number one. So what I think is important over the next week is you watch for Kash Patel to go through his hearings tomorrow, Thursday, and to be confirmed, because he's going to hold accountable all the people who persecuted Biden's political opponents the last 4 years. We talked about fear earlier with Mike. There were people that were afraid to protest in Washington, D.C. They were afraid that their bank accounts would be closed, and Christians and conservatives had their bank accounts closed, and I have the data.
Yeah, people have been debanked. You're right.
Yeah, no, but more importantly, people were censored on Facebook. I guess today Facebook is settling for Trump for $25 million for censorship in the 2020 campaign.
Wow.
Just announced today.
They're going to pay off. They're going to pay that money to Trump's campaign.
To Trump for censoring him.
To him personally. Wow.
I believe so. Yeah. So what's important is people are policy.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
the Trump administration has to stay on offense. They turned on our water to Southern California. Trump is already Southern California's best friend because none of the Democrat politicians have been helping us.
No.
Signing an executive order banning all this gender insanity. And I think the feds are going to start prosecuting when we get Pam Bondi as Attorney General. They're going to start prosecuting people that castrate children. They are the most evil of evil people. If you want to try to con a 12-year-old boy into cutting his testicles off, I would not want to have to answer for that on Judgment Day. You are evil. And remember the Bible verse, Scott. Better to have a millstone around your neck and thrown in the ocean than to harm one of these little ones.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, before you go on a little bit, that executive order banning the DEI, one of the things that he did, this is going to be interesting to see how it plays out, is basically saying to the schools that any federal money that you get, unless you get rid of your DEI programs, and that means no boys competing against girls in girls sports, or no boys in the girls' locker rooms and bathrooms.
Well, he signed that executive order separately for no boys in women's sports.
But schools that don't reverse those policies will lose all of their federal funding. And in California, we have a state law that requires schools to have bathroom, allowing boys to have, yes. It's
all about the money, Scott, for these greedy politicians.
It's
all about the money.
So it'll be interesting to watch to see what happens, because schools are either going to violate California law or they're going to give up money, or they're going to try and keep the money while they battle it in
No,
courts.
they'll just file court suits and ask, they'll do judge shopping and forum shopping to try to get a friendly trial judge. It'll eventually go up to the Supreme Court and the good guys will win. And
So
again,
if you want to put pressure on your local school district, go to your local school board, do what's called a Public Records Act request, and ask them what federal money are they receiving, both directly and indirectly, because a lot of times the federal money goes to the state and then the state dishes it out. But any federal money that they're getting, they need to walk away from today, or they need to tell the California legislature, we're not going to follow your laws, because you have to, by state law, allow boys in the girls' locker rooms and boys on the girls' sports teams. That is legislation passed by Scott Wiener, but signed by Governor Newsom. And so it's state law, and they're either going to have to violate that or give up the money. And I would put pressure on the school boards. Tell me how much money you're going to give up, and when are you going to tell the legislature to change their laws?
All right, Scott, earlier we talked about the negative 26-point view of the public of the Democrat Party. Mike talked about wanting to convert independents, no party preference, and Democrats to Republican voters. Does the California Republican Party, of which you are now a delegate, do they have the leadership, the energy, and the ability to do a mass voter registration program that would be successful in California? Be honest.
So here's the scoop. The California GOP is a worthless pile of crap. I ran for office. I got zero help from them. They couldn't even give me emails or email addresses of registered Republicans in my district when I ran for assembly. And
I hope at the convention in March that you hold them accountable personally to their faces.
And I've got delegates that I appoint, and what they're doing is the current chairperson, Jessica Patterson, is turned out. And she has done a really good job of raising money, and then she's done a really good job of spending it on junk, spending it on her salary, on staff salary, not getting Republicans elected.
Reminds me of Ronna McDonald at the RNC, another failure.
She's an ultimate failure. She's raised a lot of money, but it has done nothing with it. She has not registered. There's less Republicans registered today than when she took office 4 years ago. And there's less Republicans in elective office in the state government than when she got elected 4 years ago. So by all measures, she is an utter failure. Now there's a good former state senator, Mike Morrell, that's running for the chairmanship of the California Republican Party. And it is his goal to reverse that. He wants to take that money and he wants to put it into districts and he wants to put it into contact with both existing Republicans and non-Republicans to try and convert them into being Republicans and going right.
Voter registration is the key, Scott. What percent of the time does someone vote consistent with their registration? Most of the time, right?
Yeah, but if you sat there and talk only to Republican voters, you're not going to go anywhere.
No, you got to register people who are not Republicans as Republican voters.
So when you register to vote, there's an opportunity for you to share your email address. And about 65% of people share their email address. And so you're allowed to use that for voter contact. So one of the things that the state party could do, and it would be very economical, would be to go ahead and contact those Democrats or no party preference people and try and inform them about what's going on in Sacramento and why they need to become Republicans. And that costs almost nothing. The cost per email is pennies. And so they could sit there and contact non-Republicans. I think they need to contact Republicans and let them know what's going on so that they can be better informed and they can talk their neighbors into becoming Republicans or their other family members as well, have them be advocates for them. But then they ought to go after non-Republicans and try and convince them why the Republican Party is the one that's going to best represent them in Sacramento.
Well, let's talk about one specific.
And that's just one idea.
One specific example. Last year, you ran for state assembly. You had sent out communications and talked about the discrimination against white and Asian children in Cal State and UC admissions. And
Right.
you had a very interesting response from a voter.
Oh, they
tell us about that.
One voter actually sat there and said, I wish I had known this. I have already voted and I voted for your opponent, the Democrat Cotty Petrie Norris. If I'd have known she'd had that position, I would have voted for you instead. And why in the world?
So that's an illustration of what you're saying, how we need to communicate this. There are a lot of people in a lot of demographic groups that would be very unhappy with what's going on if they knew.
Yeah, and a lot of Democrat representatives say one thing when they're in the district and they do something totally different when they're in Sacramento. And so all the California Republican Party has to do is communicate to the voters and say, this is what's actually happening. They're putting tampons in the boys' bathrooms. They're allowing men to play on girls' soccer teams and sports teams. They're allowing men to undress in front of your daughter in their locker room for girls' sports and girls' athletics. Most people don't know that. Instead of spending money on arithmetic and improving test scores, they're spending it in the millions of dollars on DEI. It's more important for equity in outcome than it is for everybody to do as best as God's gifted them to do. That brings up another thing when we talked about Mayor Bass. I understand she's looking to hire a consultant for equity and environmental sustainability for Pacific Palisades.
We talked about that. And Elon Musk called her a communist as a result.
It's ridiculous. And, here she is. She hires, like you said, the three Kristens, all DEI hires in the fire department, all inept. And part of the reason that a bunch of houses burned down. Now, they've had to deal with the Bass, defunding of the fire department. And they had to deal with the inordinate amount of fuel in the forest due to Bass and Newsom and the ridiculous laws that are out there. But the reality of it is they didn't help. They could have saved houses had they been properly prepared and had equipment where it should have been. And they should have been the ones that were all over DWP about that empty reservoir in Pacific Palisades. There's a lot of things the fire department should have been doing. They participated in the gay pride parades and all this other crap, and they spent money there, the fire department, at the fire chief's orders, when they could have diverted some of that money to fire management, fuel management, noticing, property owners, or verifying that the water is being managed properly in case of a fire. They're not innocent at this just because Karen Bass cut 17.6 million from their budget. They still had the ability to allocate to their budget, and they chose evidently to cut the wildfire part of the budget to make their budget ends meet. So they're not innocent in this situation by any means. So Trump turned on our water. You talked about that, but
Well, but
With that-
remember, Los Angeles voters voted twice to improve fire prevention. In 2020, 82% of the vote, they approved Measure HH, which was a flat $68 parcel tax for 10 years in order to get better fire protection. In 2024, they approved Measure E, which was a 6-cent increase per square foot of property to fund LA Fire Department. They
So-
still could, with additional funding that people voted to tax themselves, they still couldn't get it right.
Well, 2024, you have to admit they hadn't had a chance to operate.
I don't admit anything. They're incompetent to the
But-
core.
But
But we got to
2020
save the rest for next week, Scott. So we need to sign off and tell our people to come back at 6:30 next Wednesday. It'll be February. We're moving into the new year.
We are, and join us again next Wednesday at 6:30. We promise to be online by then, and hopefully all our technical snafus will be taken care of. And hey, this is California Free Radio, and we're the ones bringing you the truth from behind the blue curtain that surrounds California. We think California is still salvageable, and we want you to join us in helping change California from a sanctuary state to one of common sense.
We'll see you next week.
All right.